Okay, so today we are going to make the water texture for our lily pad tutorial. I'm going to be using this blend file as an example because you can see the water better than the other one, but you can also be using it on the lily pad tutorial. It's up to you. So we are going to start shading the water now, and we are going to use a glossy node for this one. You can use the principled BSDF, but I like the glossy one because it has nice reflections. After you add the glossy texture, we can now begin with the basics of this water. These images are going to act as the basis for our water texture because they are going to be kind of fake reflections for our water, and we are going to mix them together. So bring in your picture, Control T it, and set it to box mode. This is only if you're going to plug it into the UV and scale it up a bit. So when there is duplicates of your picture, blend just helps it blend together. So bring in another mix RGB after this and set that to add. Bring in another image node, Control T it, and optionally again make it into box mode. This doesn't actually really do anything, but I did that just for the fun. So the top one is going to be the forest, the bottom one is going to be the lake bed, and we are going to mix them together with this add mix RGB. So you can press Ctrl J to seclude this node tree together and color it whatever color you want and name it whatever you want. Then we're going to move on to the next part, which is going to be the shadow coming from the tree side. This is so that the opposite side is bright and the side by the tree here is a bit darker. So we're going to bring in a gradient texture, Control T the gradient texture, add a color ramp in front of it. We can just edit the gradient mapping texture, bring it a bit to the tree side and rotating on the Z axis around -100. It might be different for you, so just play around with it until you get the shadow to behind the tree, kind of like this. Now that we have this set up together, we can Control J this node tree and name it shadow or something, whatever you want, and then we can move on to the next part. This is just going to make the side with the sunlight a bit brighter. So now you plug the gradient again into the factor of that add mix RGB and then set that color to a bright greenish. If you wanted blue, you can obviously make it bluish, but I'm going to go more for green texture because this is going to be in a forest area. And that's done now. So now we are going to move on to the second half of our node tree, which is going to be these brownish yellowish highlights on the side. It's not very important, but it gives off another nice look of reflection. So we're going to bring in a mix RGB, set that to color, then bring in a gradient texture, then do the usual, Ctrl T, bring in a color ramp, and plug that color ramp into the color mix RGB. In this gradient texture, you can rotate on 180 degrees on the Z axis, so it's coming from behind the tree. In front of that gradient node tree, we are going to bring in a mix RGB again, set that to add, and bring the factor to full. Because now we are going to bring in a Voronoi texture, plug that into the add, and Ctrl T and color ramp that. This is going to add a nice distortion for the yellowish reflection of the backside. And now plug that into the color and put an invert node behind the color into the factor. And now you can just change the color node to maybe a yellow. For if you want it different, you can make it different. But for me, I set it to a yellow. And there we go. We have our nice different color variation at the back. And now we can plug that into the glossy. Most of our texture is now done. All we need to do now is add the wave texture. So we are going to bring in a bump node, and then we can bring in the wave texture, Control T the wave texture, and then plug this wave texture into the height. Then set it to rings Z and scale it down a bit. I made it to around 20, 19, 20 or 19, somewhere there. Bring up the distortion a little bit, the detail a lot, but like maybe 15, the detail scale to maybe 1 point something, and the detail roughness bring it down to about 0.200. Now this is so that we have some nice ripples on the surface of our lake. And if you want to animate the ripples, all you need to do is animate the location of the mapping node of this wave texture. Now to finish this off, we are going to add a gradient, a basic gradient node 3 to the strength of our bump map so that we can control the strength of the waves on different parts of the lake. So I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees on the z-axis and play around with the gradient map so that we can have a fade in of waves, because we don't want it even. We don't want an even distribution. We want it to look a bit more natural, so we are going to make it distorted. So the waves are going to be coming from the light side and fading away to the dark side of the lake. And that's the basics of our water texture. Obviously you can use this now for the lily pad blend file or the lily pad environment, but that's the basics. You can swap out the glossy texture with a normal principled BSDF and then just bring down the roughness and bring up the metallic just a little bit. But the glossy is best for here because you want some reflections of this tree, your main subject. But in the lily pad blend file, maybe you want the lake to be more reflective of the light, so then you put in a principled BSDF. But that's it for now. Hope you learned something. See you in the next one. Alright, bye.